Talk radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Good evening, Fade to Black. How you doing? Today's Thursday. We made it to the end of the first week of 2024. Today is Thursday, January 4th, 2024. Lots of fours in that. Let's do this, man. Very excited about the show. Mike Clelland is back with us. And tonight, well, with Mike, you call the show The Messengers, because we're going to be talking about the overlaps, the stuff between messengers, owls, UFOs, ET, contact, his research, his book, all of that and much more tonight on the show. His 2015 book, The Messengers, was met with high praise. In it, he explores the mysterious connection between owls, synchronicities, and UFO abduction. I would call it ET abduction. I don't know if I'd get abducted by a flying saucer. That would be rough. Would much rather have it be ET. But it's Mike Clelland. It's his firsthand experiences, not mine. And we're going to be talking about all of that tonight. I'm very excited to have him back on the show. It's been way too long. And so let's just get straight to it. Mike, good evening, young man. And yeah, I would rather be abducted by ET.
Yeah, so you work as a writer, and all of a sudden you're like confronted with the simplest stuff in the English language. You realize, like, oh, I've messed up. I messed up on that one. So yeah, I
do it all the time. It's so funny how, and you're right about that. Where you and I in the community, we kind of understand what's going on. So you say UFO, you mean ET. You say ET, you mean you saw something in the sky. But to the rest of the world, right, they may not reduce it down and figure out what we're talking about. So simple mistake, but I do it all the time. I absolutely do it all the time. So
I just looked at the cover of the book. It does say, it says UFO abductee. I've been using the term direct contact, like people who have had direct contact. That's a little more nebulous and a little more open. And I think it says what I want it to say, I guess.
Do you remember? It's kind of a weird place to start off. I've got to think of the name of the TV show. There was a comedy series, People of Earth.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I loved that show.
Yeah, it was great. And it made me feel like the writers of that show, and it was like Conan O'Brien and his crew and his production team. They were listening to Fade to Black, right? They were listening to you because they had all the insider info. And it was so funny when they were sitting in the group one day and arguing if it was abductees or contactees. Right?
I have been in the circle. I have sat in this circle of at the UFO conference that they ran in Laughlin for years. They would have an abductee support group, and I remember we had exactly that conversation in that circle, with the folding chairs and
Conan O'Brien was in the background somewhere, and I remember. Again, it's kind of just a weird place to start on the show, but in that series, they went to a conference. You remember when they went to the UFO?
I didn't see the whole series, but I saw a good chunk of it. Yeah.
Okay, it's 2 seasons. Well, anyway, they go to this conference, and it was just so funny. Walking by the booths and looking at the names, right? Starseed Children or whatever, right? So I was like, man, the show was made for me. I ended up, I'm going to be straight. Sometimes I I just need to cleanse and tell the truth. I'm going to tell the truth right now. I've binged both seasons like 5 times.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I went back and watched it again and watched it again. I loved it. I was really upset that they didn't do a season 3.
I remember enjoying it greatly, and I remember that it was. You know, I'm so cynical a lot of times with like Hollywood and the pop culture is how it presents all this stuff. But I thought that one was dead on.
Yeah, it was spot on the money. It really, really, really was. And I at the different conferences, I haven't gone to one of those groups. Right? They do a pre-conference, post-conference, sometimes in the day. Most conferences have them, but I've never considered myself a contactee or an abductee. As far as I know, okay. So then you have to see it. I don't want to give it away, but I was regressed about 6 months ago by Sarah Breskman Cosme, and we did it for my TV show. And so I'm not going to give anything away, so there's no spoilers here. But when I thought about this, because I had always said I don't want to be regressed, right? Let's leave the past alone. I'm comfortable with where I'm at right now. But the closer that Sarah and I got, and we've done a lot of things around the country and around the world together, I just enjoyed her personality and things. And then I watched her do a couple of sessions in person. And, if I'm going to do it, it'll be Sarah. So we do it, and we do it on camera. And in the studio, so we set up, we got cameras, we got candles, we got lights, and we got all this stuff. And but when I thought about it, or when I thought up it, I should say, and let's do this on camera. If I'm going to do it, let's just do it on camera. So we set up the whole show, we do it, we're on set, and I turned to Sarah, I said, now, no preloading. Let's just do this. Take me where, ask me whatever. I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to investigate this. I don't want to go back and remember that. I don't want any of that. Let's just see what happens. And I'm going to leave it there, Mike, but I'm going to say this, and I don't use bad language on the show, but the stuff coming out of my mouth, right? Whoa, man. And so let's just say this. I could probably sit in one of those groups now.
Wow. Okay. So can I ask you, so was it emotional in the moment? You don't have to answer. I'm just curious because
it was okay. Well, I'll answer that as briefly as I can. When we went into this, my show is a half hour. Mm-hmm. So in discussions with this, the discussions were with the production team, the director, and all of that stuff. We need about 10 minutes of material. Okay. All right. So, and that sounds about right, because we'll go back and analyze this on the show and we'll talk about it. Okay. So when we're done and she goes like 3, 2, 1, snaps her finger. I think that's what happened. Something like that. But she snaps her fingers or claps or something. And I open my eyes and I went, oh crap, we were taping this. I forgot, right? I mean, I was that out of it. And I spin around and I put my feet on the floor and I look over at Sarah and I said, did we get it? Right? She goes, you were out for 1 hour and 11 minutes. And I was like, what? I thought it was 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So the emotional part that you're talking about. So now, and I'm trying to come back to planet Earth, mm-hmm. Right? Okay. And I'm trying to, I'm getting my head together, and I'm thinking to myself, an hour and 11 minutes. And then I started to do a recall. I was like, oh, yeah. Oh, no. Oh, man. Yeah, it was like that. So I would have to go back and watch all of it to see. But yeah, I don't want to give any of it away.
I'm not asking for details, but I'm just, because I've done it. I've done a few hypnosis sessions. Very few have been successful. I've tried it a bunch of times, and initially I think I was just too nervous. I was so nervous.
I thought the same thing, because when I was a kid, when I was like 20, there was a friend of a friend at that, I can hypnotize anybody. I'm a hypnotist. And I was like, yeah, all right, let's go. Right. And it didn't happen. With Sarah, I'm serious. With Sarah, he goes, and I mean, this is on camera, right? Is this going to work? I don't know. So I'm lying there, and she's doing her thing, and all I remember is this. She said something like, okay, you're on stair number 2. And I said to myself in my head, why are you waking me up? She had already gone through 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. I don't even remember that. I remember her saying stair number 2. And then I just gone. It was crazy town. I couldn't believe how deep I went as far as letting my mind go. I was out. An hour and 11 minutes, man. And it was exhausting. That was the other thing. You said you've done it, what, 3 times?
Oh, I've had successful ones. So one time I did it for a past life regression to look into issues, just emotional. Of all the stuff, of all my issues, I have a history of clinical depression. So I went to a hypnotherapist, Lorraine Flaherty in London. I was in London, and I did a session, and that was only to look at a past life. And this story emerged, and it was so emotional, and I don't believe it. Like, I don't believe the story that emerged. Like, it was this incredibly theatrical, high drama event, and I was like crying and swearing, and oh my word! And then at the end, I felt great. I just sat up in the chair, and like I knew I was like, my history of depression was over, and so I had it was like 25 years of Prozac ended with like 2.5 hours on her, recliner chair.
Right.
And that was 11 years ago now, 12 years ago now. And 10 years ago. And I've been symptom free from depression for 10 years. And I had not been able to say that since I was 12 years old.
But that's amazing. And congratulations on that. The past life, this is my fear. Okay, this is my Pandora's box with that. I do, because people do the past life regression, and they're always like Cleopatra.
I wasn't.
Right?
Yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean? Joan of Arc, King Arthur. Something crazy. I'm going to do a past life regression, and I'm going to be making mud pies as a bum in London in 1600. Something during the plague. I don't want to remember that. And I want that to be my symptoms of what I'm going through today, to find out that, I was a leper in, I don't want to know that stuff.
Yeah.
That's my fear.
So we can talk about it if you want, but the session that I did, we might have to wait a little bit, because it's kind of a showstopper if I tell you what the session that I did, which I'm totally open to talk about, in 2018 with Yvonne Smith in California. I did a session. Whoa. Now this is the same thing. And like, I don't believe what emerged under hypnosis is true. Like, I don't necessarily think it's true. I I can say it's a great story and it has like a mythic lesson, and I recognize that. But I know enough about myself that I would make myself crazy if I tried to say, is it true? Is it not true? Is it true? Is it not true? So I just have to divorce myself from that and say, wow, is it a powerful story? Like, let's proceed forward and pay attention to the story, but I don't necessarily feel I need to believe the story.
Yeah, I kind of went through the same things mentally, thinking about it as I was unpacking my session. But here's the thing, Mike. I said things and made statements, complete sentences, with words and a vocabulary and a mindset that I never use. It didn't even sound like me. And I was very confused about that, in that it came from a place, and I've done thousands of shows. I know how I speak. I know how I reach for words and how I present myself. The person that was speaking during this session, wow, and it was just like, and even, I don't want to use the word profound because that's too strong of a word. But to me, what I was listening to, I was like, that dude's pretty smart, right? He's saying some profound things, but I haven't repeated them. They're buried. They're in there. They came out. But that was the part for me where you have an inner self. There's that doesn't verbalize, that doesn't come out and say things. And that's the part where I said to myself, there's something very, very legitimate going on here. And that's just my own personal experience, but I know who I am, like you do, right? And I wish I could repeat those things. And remember, I would have to go and write them down. It literally, for me, it was like that.
You recorded the session? You must have made a transcript.
No comment.
Okay, so I won't. I'm not pressing you on what the content is, but so here, can I tell a story? Just what happened?
Sure.
So I've been doing this owl research since about 2009, really. Stuff started around 2006, but it was 2009 when I really started to like dig into it. And I like the owl stuff as far as part of the UFO lore has been well understood. I mean, there's been I didn't discover this. Whitley Strieber wrote beautifully about it. John Mack wrote beautifully about it. What I did was I'm the one that went crazy and got obsessed with it and just started digging into it in ways that, like I ended up writing 3 big fat books about my owl research. So now in those years, I had a bunch of experiences as I was doing the owl research, and those events certainly sound like contact experiences, like abduction experiences. Like they play out. They sound just like the kind of stuff you would read in a book by, Bud Hopkins or a book by Preston Dennett. So, and I knew it, and I was in a state of denial, but at the same time I was doing this owl research, and what happened was, I had a blog, and at the top of my blog I said, I want to hear your owl stories. And when I talked on, when I would write essays about these things and about the reporting and about the work I was doing and about the experiences I was having, which often had owls in them. And it was remarkable. It was the synchronistic power of what I was going through was like, left me really unnerved. So anyone, anywhere in the world who has an experience with a UFO and has access to the internet, and I'm about 2 mouse clicks away. You can do it right now. You can Google UFOs, owls. I'm the first thing that comes up and about the next 15 things under that, and they're going to find me. So I have been for the last, it's 2024 now, the last 15 years, it feels like I've been doing full-time research on this, where people have been sending me their stories, and I've been reaching out to them and contacting them and trying to make sense of them and talking to the people who have had these experiences of a co-joined event with a UFO and an owl. And it's been remarkable. So at the time
Yvonne
of this,
Smith. Yeah, Yvonne.
yeah. So
Smith.
I'll bring us up to Yvonne. So when I did the session, I wanted to look into one night where there was no fear, and it sure plays out like a UFO contact event. And before we started, I said, hey, when I'm under, you ask me about those owls. You ask me what's up with the owls. And she said, of course. She said, of course. So we do this session. Oh my gosh, the stuff rolls out of me in ways that just I never expected. It gets so bizarre. And I'm like screaming and swearing and crying and like, and then whoosh, I'm like totally calm. Like I went from so agitated to whoosh, calm. And it was obviously like, ooh, I guess this is all we're going to get. The session's over. So we talked a little bit. And then while I was still under, she said, and Mike, what is your connection to owls?
Oh, okay.
As I asked her to say that. So now when I'm under the hypnosis, like I did my own transcription. Like I put the headset on and listened to the audio. It's really easy to transcribe because she asks a question and she kind of whispers. And then there's a long pause and then I kind of whisper the answer. So it's really easy to transcribe. But she asks, Mike, what is your connection to owls? And without skipping a beat, I speak very clearly. It doesn't sound like the rest of the thing I say. The owls aren't important. Right? So I've been working on owls full time for close to a decade. She asked me what's up with the owls. I say, the owls aren't important. And what comes out next just flowed out of me like poetry. And I could it just rolls off my tongue. I said, the owls aren't important. I am an artist, and I know how people take in an image and how they need a symbol. The owls aren't important. The owl is a symbol on a door. It is the door that is important. We are on this side of the door in a tight, claustrophobic little hallway. And on the other side of the door is an infinite vastness.
That's heavy. Now, okay. Now, did you ever say those words before?
Never.
Interesting. Okay. Did you have you used them since?
It has reframed the way I look at the owl phenomena. Yes, absolutely. Right. It has. I was clinging to the owl in a way that was like I made progress in my research and everything like that. But I was clinging to the owl in a way that I needed to loosen up that grip and look at the bigger picture in a way. So it's less that the owl is like the owl is a symbol for this greater reality, let's say, for this alternate reality, for this hidden reality. And that's how I've been proceeding forward since then.
I'll tell you something very interesting. And I remember after our last show together, I thought about this and we might have talked about it on the air, but I've thought about it a lot since. I don't believe I have ever seen an owl in the wild. I don't know, maybe in a zoo. But I don't think I have ever seen an owl. Now, images of an owl, sure, whatever, yeah, of course, TV. But have I seen one with my own eyes? I don't believe that I have. And isn't that strange? Everybody I know has seen an owl. People talk about it all the time. I never have.
I see them all the time. I saw one a couple nights ago.
Yeah, see? That's what I'm saying. Is it because... Well, why do you think that is? Is it because I'm not looking?
Well, I live in a place with a lot of owls, right? So I lived in upstate New York where there were a lot of owls, and I'm living in the Pacific Northwest near Seattle where there's lots of owls. And I hear them all the time. I was living in Wyoming and Idaho where there are lots of owls. So, I was in a place with a lot of owls. So... And I pay attention to those kinds of things. I'm looking for them at this point. So I'm and also I'm putting the intention out. So I don't want to sound like something from like whatever the secret or but but I'm putting an intention out to see owls, and it feels like the universe is like giving me that a little. So I'm putting a lot of energy into owls, and the universe is reflecting that right back at me. So,
well, when I'm with people from our community, and the conversation happens all the time about owls, and when it does, your name definitely comes up, and so many people have read your book, and to have, these are people that I know. I absolutely relate not only to the owl part, but to the messenger part as well. And the resonation that the community has had, not only with you directly, but going back to the book and how the book explains some of the phenomenon in this fashion, I've always found, and I feel like I haven't been invited to the party, because everybody else totally resonates and they've had these experiences and I have not. And I've had crazy stuff happen and I've seen crazy things, but not that.
Any other animals? Any other odd animals? Deer? Hummingbirds? Crows? Ravens?
Sort of. No, you know what? No, I don't want to make it up. I have, or try to imagine my way into this. I have hummingbird feeders. Mm-hmm. I go outside and watch the hummingbirds all day long. I watch the hummingbird wars. There's nothing more gangsta than watching hummingbirds go at it, because they are cute and cuddly. They are vicious, man. They are territorial. And but as far as relating that back to the phenomenon, I don't believe so. No.
Okay, because I know some people have lots of deer experiences and no owl experiences, and other people have, so and other people have raven experiences and owls, there's eagles, and so it's not so the owl is very particular to a one spectrum of, let's say, the spiritual space, or what would you say, the archetypal space. That's a better word. So the owl is one little thin sliver, the deer has another archetypal meaning that might resonate with someone differently. Don't ask me why. I say the owls chose me. I did not choose the owls. So
that's interesting. In People of Earth, it was a deer.
Correct. Yeah, it was a deer that was started out as a screen memory. Where what's his name? The actor. Think of his name here in a second. Ozzy Graham was the name of the character.
Ozzy.
Yeah. Ozzy Graham saw the, and that was a scary scene. It was kind of played for comedy, and I was like, "Holy crap, that would be terrifying." Yeah. So when before I ask, it's just like a base. So when did you become the owl guy? But take us back. And that's a pretty good. If you're going to be called something, that's pretty good. Yeah, I'm content with that. Yeah, so I'm sort of stuck with it. I feel like I can't. Like I want to write a book on something else, and I guess I should, but I feel like I'm a little bit stuck with that moniker. Yeah.
When did it all start? Take us to the first day.
So 2006, in the autumn of 2006, I went camping with a friend of mine. Her name is Kristen, and it was kind of a first date. Like I was living in a town in the west, right near Jackson Hole, Wyoming, right near Yellowstone in the Tetons, and it was really strong camping community. So it was really normal just to say, "Hey, let's go camping." And so I asked this complete stranger, "Let's go camping," and her and I went to a really beautiful part of the mountains, and we went with a really light packs. And as the sun was setting, I was making dinner on a flat rock. Now, to tell the story correctly, there's all these, typical of any of these stories, there's threads that come in from all directions. So, and I'm making dinner, and the sun is setting, and I recognize, I'm looking at her, and she said something that was so insightful and so smart and so, sensitive. And I was like, wow, this is a really smart person. I did not expect this person would have the depth that she has. And at that moment, an owl flew over us, and then another owl, and a third owl. And for the next, I'm going to say, couple of hours, these owls flew over our heads. And then when we didn't take a tent for that trip. The weather forecast was going to be beautiful. So we just laid our sleeping bags on the ground on a pad and looked up at the sky, northern Rockies, million, billion, trillion stars, and these owls would fly right over our faces, and they would blot out the stars for just a half a second. They're silent in flight. It was so magical. It was so magical. And we went camping. I said, let's do this again. It was only for one night. Let's do this again. This was so great. So 4 days later, we went camping again. I just talked with her tonight. We're still good friends. And 4 days later, we went camping. And as the sun was setting, it happened again. 3 owls. We were in a different part of the mountains. 3 owls flew around us, landed near us, landed on branches near us. And the first time, they kind of kept their distance. And this second night, 4 nights later, they landed. This one owl landed at our feet. And this was not a screen memory. These were 9-inch tall, 10-inch tall little owls. So there's nothing mysterious about the owl itself. Their behavior was mysterious, but the owl itself was just a little normal owl. And it was, to have it happen once was pretty cool. To have it happen twice was really, it's like a flaw in me almost to get absorbed into this kind of mythic symbology and such. So now, what I didn't say at the time, and I'm saying it now, is that as it was happening, both nights, I'm looking at a little owl on the ground or a little owl on the branch or owls flying over, I had this voice in my head that said, this has something to do with the UFOs.
Really?
Yeah. Clear as a bell. Clear as a bell. Just an ever-present kind of urgent, this has something to do with the UFOs. And now this is funny. I say it like this. I went back and I kept a diary entry. What I actually said was, and I'm going back, this is the diary entry. I feel almost embarrassed to say this. The voice in my head that said, this has something to do with the UFOs. You are an abductee. That's what the voice said. And so I'm looking at a little owl. There's nothing. The night is beautiful, and there's no hint that anything else happened. But looking at real owls. Now, afterwards, I got all crazy about looking up, and so did Kristen. We both were looking up the spirit meaning of owl and the symbology of owl and the mythologies of owls. And at the same time, I started looking into the UFO stuff. Now, in my youth, I had a handful of experiences. Close-up UFO sighting, I had a missing time event, and when I was 30, I had an event where I woke up in the middle of the night, sat up in bed, my bed was pushed right up against the wall. I was living in Maine at the time, and I sat up and looked outside, and there was a bright light, and there were 5 gray aliens walking towards the house. So I had these memories, and I denied all of it. I denied the implications of all of it, and until the owl event, and I started looking into my own experiences. Do you remember Leo Sprinkle, right?
I do.
So Leo was in Wyoming. I was in Idaho. So I'd made the big drive to Laramie, and I spent some time with Leo and worked with him on these issues. And he was great. He was so wonderful. But what he did is he put me in touch with people. He would just call me up and say, Mike, you should talk to this person. Here's their phone number. And I'd call him up. And I started asking everyone, hey, by the way, have people with UFO contact experiences or abduction-like experiences. And I would ask them, have you ever had any odd experiences with owls? And they would have the weirdest stories. And so I started putting articles on the blog. I started talking about it. I started writing little essays. And very quickly, this was 2009 or so, you could find me in a Google search for UFOs and owls, and people started sending me their stories, and I started collecting and archiving these stories, and that turned into the big fat book, The Messengers, which came out in 2015.
And when did you make how did you make the connection, besides the voice in your head, of course, but the confirmation and the connection between the owls and being abducted?
Well, it was in the literature. I mean, Whitley Strieber spoke about it beautifully in Communion, and then in the follow-up books he did after that. I think one was called Transformation. And then, and also John Mack wrote about it beautifully in the late 90s in his book, Abduction. It shows up there. Oh, and especially in a book that Dr. John Mack wrote called Passport to the Cosmos. He really explored the owl thing in that too. But in those books, if you put it all together, it would probably be 2 pages of owls stuff.
Right.
There's a sentence here and a sentence there. And then, so I knew there was a connection even before, going camping and hearing that voice.
Did you believe? Did you know that you were an abductee?
Oh no, I had the clues. I had read Communion. I had read John Mack's books. I knew what a missing time event. I had a missing time event associated with a bright orange light in the sky. And when I was 12 years old, about 2 hours of missing time. I knew what that implied. I was not going there. Whoa, was I in a state of denial. I was not going to deal with any of this stuff. So I was, and that all crumbled. And that's a rough chapter of your life to go from like, oh, I'm not going to believe any of this stuff to like, holy crap, this could be real. And so that process was like an owl sighting. Those owl sightings started that process, like an awakening experience or a confirmation type event.
Yeah. And take me through that. Take me through the process. What were the steps? I mean, because did you have any conscious memories of any of this?
I had a fully conscious memory of 5 gray alien beings out my bedroom window, standing in the snow, backlit by a bright light. I probably saw them for 20 seconds, but wow, it did not feel like a dream, did not feel like a hallucination. I dismissed it completely as a dream, but I knew it was.
And how old were you? When was this? Was this
30.
Before the owls or after the owls?
I was 44 when I saw the owls with Kristen, and I was 30 when I saw the beings out my window.
Okay, so let's go. Okay, this is interesting. Okay, so what happened that night when you were 30?
I was alone in this house in Maine, right? Steep Falls, Maine, cute little like maple syrup kind of town in New England. And it was either January or February of the winter of 92, 93. So the January or February of 1993. And I worked with Bud Hopkins on this, talked with him at length. He tried to hypnotize me. Not much came up on this event. So I know the implications of this story. So a bright light's flooding the house, flooding into the bedroom window. And I sit up to see what it is. It like wakes me up. And Bud Hopkins asked really good questions, like, how often are you woken up by a bright light? And I'm like, not really, ever, I guess. So I sit up in bed, and the window is right there next to the bed, and there's a bright light. And then in the foreground, in front of the light, walking towards the house, are 5 skinny beings with the bald heads and the big black eyes and this tight little spacesuits, and they were tiny, and it was eerie, and they were too skinny. They looked like they were too skinny to support their heads, like almost like spindly stick insects almost. And I heard a voice in my head that said, "Oh yes, they're here. Now is the time to put your head on the pillow and shut down." And that's exactly what I did. I just laid my head on the pillow and blacked out. And in the next morning, I never even bothered to go outside and look and see if there were footprints in the snow. It just seemed absurd that I had this memory. But there have been so many emotional issues tied to this and synchronicities tied to this. And now here's something. If you're going to be familiar with this. From the reporting and people we've talked with, I'm certain, when I was looking at these beings, the world was like eerily still and silent. And it felt like not only was the world silent, like my mind chatter was eerily clear. And it felt like the world was extra vivid in a way that doesn't match normal reality. And I talked to, do you know Brigitte Barclay from England?
I do. Mm-hmm.
so she had an experience in LA in a convertible on the freeway.
She told me the whole story. Yeah.
So I sat with her for a while, and she did, with no prompting from me. What I was doing for a long time, I was going around to like UFO conferences and talking to people. I was not at peace. Like this was like a needy, frightened part of me that was like, I needed to understand this. And I would ask people, have you ever experienced this weird silence and this eerie silence? And I had been asking people this. I didn't have to ask Brigitte. She just gave me the information. She said, when I was in the presence of that flying saucer, that craft, you know, she's described it. She said, you know, when you take two magnets and they go click and they click together, and then you pull them apart and you twist 190 degrees and you try to push it together, but they oppose each other. So you can try to push them together, and there's this warbly energy in between the magnets. There's this weird, there's nothing to see, but you can feel it. She said, when I was in the presence of that craft, it felt like I was between the magnets. And when she said that, I was like, oh my Lord, you and I have experienced exactly the same things. That is the perfect way to describe the feeling I had. And I've had that feeling several other times in other type events. One time in a dream I had that, which was a contact type dream, but that sensation of a distorted reality was like being between the magnets.
I remember just a little anecdote. It's kind of funny. This is about a year ago, and I'm sleeping. Room is dark. I'm sleeping, and this light flashes in my room, and I wake up, and the room is dark. I thought, man, something flashed, and then it flashed again. And my hole at the foot of my bed, on the far wall, is a big window, but the blinds are closed. It lights up again. I went, oh my God, something is lighting up the back of my house. And I freaked. And I get up, and then I heard the thunder. And I went, oh, it's lightning. I mean, and I went out. I ended up, the funny part about the story is I went out. You remember the movie War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise? Mm-hmm. When he was in the backyard watching the lightning, right? And he's freaking out. That's what I did. I went out on my back patio on the second floor, and I stood there, and I was watching the lightning just light up the sky, and kind of just for about 30 minutes. But the funny part about it was, for a second, I thought it was E.T. I thought it was a craft that was lighting up the back of my yard. Just for a second. I mean, I freaked out. I mean, because the whole room lit up, but it turned out to be a lightning storm. And so I was a little disappointed. It was cool to watch it from the back patio for 30 minutes, but which never happens in California. But it wasn't E.T. And which takes us back to Bud Hopkins' excellent question. How many have you ever, been woken up like that? And you know what? It's happened once for me that I know of, that night with the lightning. Mm-hmm. It's a very uncommon thing. Have you had that happen since?
Nothing to that degree, no. Nothing that matches that type of event. I've had other things that sure sound like contact events. And
now, let's get back to the owls for a second. We're going to be talking about owls all night.
Oh, I do. Yeah, that's nothing new for me. So
yeah, exactly. Have you? I'm talking not with literature or people writing to you, but and you had that 2 nights with your friend. What was her name? Kristen. Kristen. But when did you have your first personal connection where an owl and a UFO or ET are in the same event?
So that would have been in with a woman, Natasha. We were camping. This is really funny. We were camping, sleeping on the ground. And I met Natasha at a UFO conference. And this would have been in southern Utah. And she's from Germany. We had a long distance relationship. We were dating at the time. And this would have been around 2011. And we were coming, is this right? We were coming back from the event. We had attended the conference in outside of Phoenix in Arizona, and we were driving back to my house in Idaho. So we were driving through southern Utah. It was a wonderful trip, driving through the beautiful part of Utah there. We were both sleeping on the sand in this beautiful spot near a town called Boulder, Utah, on a lonely road, and it was a perfect spot to camp out. And she's jet lagged, and I've been driving all day, so I'm tired. And she says, "Mike, I can't sleep. What can I do?" And I said, "Take a walk. Go ahead and take a walk." So she takes a walk, and I'm lying there next to this juniper bush. And she says, "Is it safe?" And I said, this is a perfectly safe part of the world. So don't worry. So she says she could walk without a flashlight. It was just the light of the stars. This is like the classic. It's like like where they filmed the Roadrunner cartoons. It was like that kind of desert scape. And she's walking along this road. We plotted out on the map, and I've been back there since. And she sees this floating orb of light floating alongside the road next to her. And at first she thinks, is that someone with a flashlight? I said, "Oh no, this is an orb, and it gets big like a beach ball, and then it gets small like a grapefruit, and then it comes towards her, and then poof, it like flashes and it's gone." So she's scared, like a floating orb. And there's nobody there. And so she runs back and wakes me up. Now, while she was looking at the orb, I was lying there, and there was an owl in the bush so close to my head, and it was booming. It was a great horned owl. They make a very distinct call. And I sat up and I tried to see this owl. It was so loud. It was right there in the bush. I could not see it. I didn't see any evidence. Wow, was it loud. And she was very close when she saw the orb. And then she came back and she woke me up. She kind of said, Mike, we need to leave. We need to get out of here. And I'm like, okay, well, let's go. And she explained the story. Then I was scared. We left it was probably 4 a.m. when we started driving out of that little camp spot. Now, we've since looked at the map. She puts her finger on the map. This is where I was. I put my finger on the map. This is where I was sleeping. They're not very far apart. They're like less than a football field apart. And that owl was loud in the desert night. She should have been able to hear that loud owl perfectly. She didn't see it. And I gotta say, it is very strange that I could not see that owl being as close as it was to me. And I'm cautiously speculating that it was some sort of screen event. That noise of the owl was a screen event, the same way someone seeing an owl or seeing a deer could be a visual screen, but it felt like I may have had an audio screen event because she did not see it, and that does not make sense to me.
Sure. And for those that may not know, what is a screen event?
Okay, so a screen event or a screen memory, this is a term that I think Bud Hopkins used it and other researchers have used this. So what is very commonly reported is that, and I get this in my email inbox all the time, a few times a week I get this story. Someone driving down the road at night and they turn a corner and there's a 4-foot tall owl in the road. And they pull up to the owl, and the owl is tall enough to look over their hood. And they say, "Oh, isn't that weird?" And then there might be a little glitch in their memory. And then all of a sudden they arrive home and they look at the clock and they said, "I should have been home at midnight. And it's 2 a.m. Where did those 2 hours go?" And I've talked to people who have gone through hypnosis, and I've talked to hypnotherapists about exactly this. And the hypnotherapists say it's very common that people will see the owl in the road, or the owl in the backyard, or the owl in the window, or the owl standing at the foot of their bed. And the hypnotherapist will say, "Well, can you describe this owl?" And the witness will say, "Well, it's bald and it's got big black eyes and it's got this skinny body and I don't think that's an owl." So the implication is that the ETs, that these alien beings are using some sort of psychic projection to put a screen on the mind of the observer. And so they think, instead of, it would be terrifying to turn a corner and see a gray alien standing in a row. So what they see instead is an owl, which is unusual, but it's not impossible. But I will say a 4-foot tall owl, owls simply do not get that tall. That's beyond what's really possible. And so that story of the screen memory is very common. And I will say it's not just owls, it's owls. The two most common are owls and deer. They sort of vie for the top point of what is a common screen memory. And those take up the majority of the reports of what appear to be screen memories. It gets very murky because it's hard to come up with a true answer. And then below that are other things like cats, raccoons, big squirrels. People say they see 4-foot tall squirrels. That's pretty common. And then it gets right into other things like, firemen and dead relatives and Jesus. Often there's stories of people turning a corner and seeing Jesus in the middle of the road. And it turns out to be a screen memory.
And so the screen memory is there, and then blocking out the real memory or the real event and anything that would be following it. Right.
Exactly. So if in conjunction with the 4-foot tall owl in the road is 2 hours of missing time, the implication is that there was an abduction and the person was taken out of their car and taken on board a craft. This is what shows up in the research. I'm not a hypnotherapist. I don't have any direct experience of doing exactly these kinds of studies. I'm depending on people who I think are doing hard work, like what Bud was doing and what John Mack was doing and what Yvonne is doing now and Mary Rodwell and such. So these events imply that the psychic powers, whether it's technology or a psychic ability of these beings, is powerful enough to influence the mind of the observer, and that they can think they're seeing something that's not there.
Now, what about your friend Natasha? Okay, where you mentioned this may have been a screen memory, right? Did she experience anything? And was there missing time? And was that a contact or an abduction experience that was screened out?
I've never actually looked into that directly. I have another I have another experience with Natasha, which is a little more telling than this one. So Natasha and I had been camping. We'd spent a lot of time in that part of the world, that desert part of southern Utah. So the year before would have been the spring of 2010. Natasha and I were driving around the desert. This is a funny story. We showed up in Cortez, Colorado, and my car was acting up. The brakes were acting funny. So we had to stop in this little town, and I had to have a mechanic look at the brakes. And the mechanic comes out of the back room, and he's literally wiping his hands with a oily rag, and he says, "I can't let you leave town or you'll die." And Natasha and I are like, "Oh, okay, what's up?" And he said, "Your brakes are failing, and I cannot, in good conscience, and I can't let you leave with these failed brakes." And he said, "I can fix them, but it's going to take 5 days to get the part." So it was the guy, we got a screaming good deal on a rent-a-car. They helped us out. And then we had this really nice car, and we drove around the desert for 5 days. It was actually great. It was great. But that first night, after the guy saying, "You can't leave town or you'll die," we camped on the side of the road. And this is in a forest with big trees. This is in Colorado. Beautiful spot to camp on the side of the road. And I remember we woke up in the tent and we were both screaming. I worked as an outdoor educator. I did a lot of work in the mountains and slept in a lot of tents over the decades. And so I'm very comfortable in a tent. And we both woke up. So she and I describe it the same way. She's a very trustworthy witness in this story. We were emotionally freaking out, screaming, and it lasted for about 5 minutes, and then we both are asleep. And then when we were asleep, I had this memory of floating up in the tent. It felt like I floated up in the tent, like on a elevator up feeling, that rising up feeling. And there was in the tent, gets so strange. Okay, so in the tent there was what I can only call as a floating mandala, something about the size of a pizza pan, was floating in the tent with us. And then I just went right through the roof of the tent, and I had this have the memory of me saying, I have to remember this. 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 And then that changed to, am I on a table? Am I on a table? Am I on a table? And then I heard Natasha's voice with her German accent. And she said, Mike, you're floating. And then whoosh, I was right back in the tent. Now, this is my memory. I've never explored it like using hypnosis or anything like that. I am very skeptical of what may or may not have happened. I don't think it matches the memory that I have. I think my memory is kind of distorted.
I haven't been camping besides an RV. Okay, that doesn't count. But I haven't been camping in a tent since I was a kid. But I can say, as an adult, I will never go camping with you.
I was a professional outdoor guide. I took a lot of people camping. So when I woke up that morning, now to tell the story properly gets so weird. This is the problem with these stories. They're so strange. Okay. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I had an experience in 2009 where I have a slight cataract in my right eye, and I could squint in the sunlight and see this little image emerge. This is when I was very active on my blog. I could see this little image emerge, and this image was of me. I'm going to be very cautious to say it was me. It was like a bald person and it was sort of caricatured. It felt like a bald person sitting in like the lotus position. And I could just focus it in my eye. It was 100% the cataract that was just making this image in my mind. And no one in the whole world could see it except for me. And I remember thinking when it happened, it's like, oh God, now I got to put this on my stupid blog. Like no one's going to believe me. I'm going to sound crazy. So I did an illustration to put up my blog of this weird face, this weird bald face. And it was very symmetrical, and I feel like I captured it very well. And I put the illustration on the blog. It's in both, I think it's in 2 books of mine. And so when we woke up the next morning, I said, Natasha, what happened? What happened? And she said, I saw a face. And she said, where did you see the face? And she pointed to the exact spot, which was kind of down by her knees, floating in the tent, of where the floating pizza pan mandala was. And I said, like, can you describe the face? Now, here, let me backtrack a little bit. When I was floating and looked at that mandala, and this was all, I kept a very tight diary entries as all this was happening. So I feel very confident saying this. The next morning I made notes. And when I was floating up and I looked at that pizza pan shape, it was a circle with a little dot in the middle. That's all it was. And I said, that looks like the thing in my eye. Which it didn't look at all like that. But that's what I thought. And then I floated out of the tent. And now the next morning, Natasha, I said, what did the face look like? Where did this face look like? She points to the spot where I saw the pizza pan. And she said, I can't describe it. And I said, please try. And she said, it looked like that thing in your eye that you put on your blog, that drawing you did.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that when you hear something like that, we're going to take a break here in a minute, but when you hear something like that, what do you try to protect your mind? Right? Because, I mean...
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. Yeah.
Do you?
It is like, right? So how to say this? It's like the trap door, right? It's like you're standing on the trap door and the trap door just goes clunk and you're falling. That's the feeling, right? So you're like, as a like...
You need to grab something.
You need to grab anything. Any kind of like, what could this be? This can't be true. It can't be happening. No way, no. And so I'm much more at peace with this now. Like I have weird synchronicities all the time. That one's not even a synchronicity. That feels like some orchestrated stage.
Yeah,
event.
that was an event. Yeah.
So, wow, did I fight? Did I fight that? And I say this, and I'm not exaggerating. Like I spent a long time between 2000 2006 and 2013, I spent a lot of emotional energy wondering if I was losing my mind because these events were so oppressive and so emotionally challenging. So that was a great question.
Yeah, it's almost like
to push it away.
It's like an Alfred Hitchcock pullback, right?
Like from Vertigo, yeah.
From Vertigo. And because the brain is a pretty amazing device, and it will do what it can in most cases, not in everyone, to protect yourself, right? And it is from fear, from sadness, and maybe even from too much happiness, right? There's always a balance and things that are going on. And in a moment like that, you are either, right, you have a choice. You have a fork in the road. You can jump into the deep end of the pool, or you can pull back, right? And sometimes it's safer to pull back than jump into the deep end of the pool.
I found that only lasts for so long, and then something's going to snap, and you gotta admit it.
Let's take our break right here. Our guest tonight, Mike Clelland. Tonight we're talking about, the messengers. It's owls, UFOs, contact, and all of his research all night long. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
My job is not to preach. My job is to take you on this journey.
In a state of passion, nothing negative can happen.
That it's the moons of those planets that would have life.
Sometimes I see, these energies also in your field.
It is our passion and our pleasure. Hi, everybody. Jimmy Church here. Very special announcement, and that is we are shipping Fade to Black t-shirts again. It's been almost 2 years. We did a full upgrade to the website, so you can head over to jimmychurchradio.com. It's all simple to do, and it's right there. Remember, we broadcast 4 nights a week, Monday through Thursday. We bring you the best, the brightest, the most knowledgeable and amazing guests, the best conversations. We do that 4 nights a week. We also do 4 days a week. We broadcast the news, and we do that live too as well. It's not a one-man show. I do it with website support. I do it with producers. I do it with writers and artists. All contribute to the show. The best way to help support what we do here is with the Fade to Black t-shirt. And you can get your Fade to Black t-shirt one of 2 ways. First, go to jimmychurchradio.com, order a shirt. It's really that simple. You're going to get a tracking number, it's going to get shipped, and it's going to get autographed. The second way to get a shirt is with a Game Changer membership. Now, the Game Changer membership not only includes a free t-shirt, but you get a private email to me. You get unlimited commercial-free downloads. You have full access to the website, and everything includes free shipping, and everything is autographed. So help support the show. Get your Fade to Black t-shirt today. The links are below. You can just go to jimmychurchradio.com, and it's right on the website. So there you go. I'm Jimmy Church, Fade to Black. I'm so excited that I just have one thing to say. Go Beckley Teppy. River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your Jimmy Church. Tonight, our guest is Mike Clelland. We're talking about the messengers. And Mike, this is how the universe works. I say that I've never seen an owl, right? You know what's going to happen next.
I can.
Yeah. And so what do I do? You know, it's at night. It's after the show. I've just interviewed somebody about their abduction experience. I drive up, I get a burger at the 24-hour burger stand. I drive home. It's 11 o'clock. I pull up into my driveway, and there's an owl. What do I do? You know, and what does that represent?
Mm. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So what does that represent? So on the simplest level, it could just be like owls are just normal birds. They're around. It's normal for people to see owls. And they do show up at highly charged moments. And it might not have anything to do at all with the UFO issue. So it might just be, so yeah, I have a list. I should be able to do this off the top of my head. What the owls represent. Number one, pay attention. Pay attention to what's going on in the moment, what was leading up to the moment, what changes after the moment. Just pay attention. Owls are an alarm clock. They're like a little call to wake up. Just wake up and pay attention. And then two would be, this is kind of out of order. Owls show up around the time of shamanic initiation. Like part of this research has been like me reaching out and talking to shamans, or shamans finding me and asking questions. When people are going through the initiation rites of becoming a shaman, they see owls. Owls show up around the time of, anyway, so I got a list. I should be able to do this off the top of my head. I'm running, but so I would say that there is don't jump to the UFO thing right away. Don't worry. There's owls all over the place, but I would say, what's going on in your life? Here's another question. Did any good friends die recently? This is something that I did not expect to find in the research, is that around the time of someone's, usually a parent, I've got lots of story where someone's parent dies and an owl will show up and they will go into the backyard or go into I've got a great story where a guy goes into a garage and it was a woman after her mother dies and she goes into a garage and there's an owl. And she talks to the owl as if it's her mom. She says, "Mom, I love you. Thank you for visiting." And I got this, and the owl doesn't leave. And she finally has to say, "Mom, I get the message. Thank you. You can go now." And the owl flies off. This is very common. And I'm convinced this has been happening all throughout human history. So the question you asked was, you see an owl in your driveway. What does it mean? The answer is tough.
Don't go in the house, Jimmy. Eat the burger in your driveway.
Oh, I think you could go in the house. I think you could safely go in the house.
You think so? Are owls tied to other phenomena? I mean, you just mentioned, the death of a family member, but
meditation, people meditating. we'll see owls. I got lots of story about people meditating, and often with a very powerful intention, like I will help the world. And then this one guy was meditating outside, and he was saying, like, I want to bring upliftment to the world. And he closed his eyes, and he opened his eyes, and an owl facing him. You know, I got stories of people meditating in their house, and they open their eyes, and there's an owl staring at them through the window. I've got stories where, it's very common. Very common. So meditation is one. Psychedelics. People taking psychedelics will see owls. Sometimes it's like a mythic, visionary experience of, like, a 15-foot tall, owl that talks to them, which obviously isn't there in a physical sense, but is there in some sort of psychedelic sense that's influenced by the drug. But often a bunch of people take mushrooms, they're all tripping, they're all doing it kind of ritual setting, and an owl lands in the circle. Yeah.
Well, that I believe. I had a pterodactyl once, but the other part about this is when you look at different cultures around the world, especially going back, the owl is represented at cave paintings or Egyptian hieroglyphs, or you know what I mean. The owl is always there. I didn't even know there were owls in certain parts of the world. I always thought it was.
They're very common, yeah.
Yeah, and it's something. It's a symbol that is meant very important aspect to so many cultures throughout history, right?
Absolutely. So in ancient Greece, Athena had a companion owl. So she's often depicted in art with a little owl. That's actually called the little owl, a little 6-inch tall owl, which was a common owl in that part of the Mediterranean, or still is. And so she had it. That's where we get the wise owl. She's the goddess of wisdom. That's where we get the term the wise owl. Now, in the ancient lore, what I did? I called up. I can't remember the researcher's name. It'll come to me in a second. This researcher who did a lot of research into mythology, I asked him, what is the spiritual meaning of the owl? And he said the mythic meaning of the owl is the owl can fly into the darkness. The owl can fly through the forest in complete darkness. And ancient man, that must have been magic, right? So that became a metaphor for flying to the other lands, the land of the dead, the land of the other realms, the land of our ancestors, that other world. And then the owl can come back and bring a message. So it's the messenger. It comes back. It bears a message from that other world, the land of the ancestors, the land of our dead, the land that other mythic world. And I would argue you could take that one step farther to the realm of the UFO occupant, right? That magical mythic realm that seems to be the source of the UFO lore. Now, the Athena, that's a mythology from 2,500 years ago. Present day, we have Harry Potter, who has an owl that delivers the mail.
Right.
It's perfect. It's a messenger. Our popular culture right now has a messenger, has an owl as messenger, central to the most popular series of books in the history of publication.
So I'm in Egypt and last year, and I'm with Billy Carson, and Billy has this medallion with his name spelled in hieroglyphs, right? Okay. And so he takes me, I want one too, right? So he takes me to the jeweler that made this for him. And so we go in and we have this thing. And I said, I wanted to say Jimmy. And he writes it down. He says, okay, boom. And they make me this medallion. It's beautiful. So I get it. And I'm looking at it. And my name is spelled out. And there's 2 owls in my name. And looking at it. And I'm counting. And The owl is the letter M.
The sound M. Yeah, I'm
Right.
right.
And what do I think of first when I see this? Mike Clelland. Right? I'm like, man, I can't wait to tell Mike about this. And I'm staring at it. I just thought, wow, how cool is that I have two owls in my name, with ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. But yeah, and we're talking about Egypt here. And I didn't know, especially at the time, that owls were in Egypt. It's the desert, right?
Oh, there's desert owls, sure. Oh, yeah, they're everywhere. If there's hawks, there's owls.
Right.
The hawks are out during the day, and the owls are out at night.
Yeah, and so anyway, I wanted to remember that and share that with you. Every time I look at that medallion, I think of Mike Clelland. But yeah, so I've got the two owls there. And so once you start to pick up on this, as I did, then you see the owls all over Egypt. I mean, they're everywhere. And you start to head out into other cultures, and the owl is there. I like the messenger part with Athena. That's pretty amazing. And what do you think that the representation is? Do you think that ET gets that owls are messengers, and that's how we culturally accept them, and so that's the safe zone for ET to play in, right? Let's use the owl when we need to express this.
So the owl is also an archetype, and an archetype is one of those words that like philosophy students can stay up all night and argue, like what in the dorm room they can argue like what's the meaning of an archetype. But for me, the archetype would be a symbol that we all know at a deep intuitive level, like our
Bingo.
Collective conscious knows what the owl is. Now, here's something like owls are regal, beautiful birds, right? So I get a lot of stories about people saying like, oh, an owl landed on my fence in the backyard, and it was so powerful. It had such a majesty. It had such an intensity. There's nothing interesting about their story at all, but that's what they say. They talk about the incredible power and presence of the owl. People don't say that about a bunny rabbit, but they say that about the owl, right?
Right.
So there's a majesty now to the owl that is, and I've seen it too. Yeah, they're powerful, regal, beautiful animals, and so within that, like, are they just seeing a bird that has that presence, or are they tapping into that deeper power? And
ET would understand that. I mean, they would have been studying us for thousands, if not millions of years. So they understand the impact of what an owl is deep inside of our id, right? They would get that. Little factoid, you probably know this, but maybe the audience doesn't, that owls' eyes are not round.
Mm-hmm.
They do not move their eyes. That's why they move their heads, because their eyes are tubes. They're long, and they're always pointing forward. Isn't that interesting? And that's why when an owl is staring at you, right, their head is, it's looking at you.
Yeah. They have to be, and that's in the hieroglyph of the owl is the only bird in the hieroglyphs. All the other ones are profiles.
Right.
The hawks and the falcons and our profiles, and the ibis is all profile. The owl is looking straight at you.
Yep. Its head is turned.
Yeah. So the and that's evolutionarily, that's the shape, that tube shape is better. It allows more light to enter the eye so they can fly at night in total darkness. What we would call total darkness is they're at complete
daylight
ease for them. Yeah.
Right. Now, so back to this. We have the screen memory theory, and I find that very interesting. The other part is ET by choosing the owl, or any part of the supernatural, right? Choosing the owl as something that we would be receptive to. And again, I haven't seen an owl in person, so I haven't had that impact, but so many people have.
And you must have heard them say exactly that about the presence of an owl and the power of it.
Do you know how many times I have sat with friends and had to have to listen to their owl stories?
Are you joking? Do you know what I do every day?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I don't have those experiences. And what kind of give me an example of some of the email and stories that you do get?
Here's one from a woman that her name is Karis Melina Brown. She's really interesting, spiritual, like really smart woman. She has had all kinds of experiences in her life that seem to imply UFO contact, and she's just at the edge of that world. And then all these other things. She's very psychic. She does psychic readings for people. So she's very open and aware in that way. She went on a hike, and when she was on the hike, she said, did we freeze up?
You are. Don't worry about it.
Okay. So audio. My voice, okay, gotcha. Good. Okay. So she goes on a hike, and she starts the hike, and she says, today is the day I am going to see E.T. I know it. She has this weird thing. She said she was walking down the trail and people ignored her. Like they just passed by and didn't even look at her. So she's walking down the trail. This is in California, just in some park, really. And she says, oh, I should step off the trail. So she just is moved to step off the trail. She said, oh, I should sit on that rock. And so she goes and sits on the rock. And she's sitting on the rock. And she says, oh, no, I should move a little this way. And then she hears kind of a voice in her head. No, a little back. No, not quite there, a little back. So she's finally sitting on this rock in just the right spot. And she realizes there's sort of a tunnel in front of her through the bushes. And she sees a great horned owl. Now, this was at a point when she was doing a lot of fairy research. She was doing research into fairy lore. And I have this interview. I did an interview with her and I have it recorded. She looks at this owl, and the first thing she thinks, she doesn't say it aloud, she says, Are you an ET or are you a fairy? And she hears the owl looks right at her, and she hears a voice in her head, and it says, why can't I be both? You're both. And then what occurred was this, like almost like a psychedelic, like download of information that is exactly the kind of things that people report when they're on board craft, let's say. And they'll describe this download event of taking on all kinds of psychic information. She had a very similar event that took place in the presence of an owl. So it gets very murky. She's describing a small bird, but the story that plays out matches the onboard stories, like the onboard, the craft stories that you'll hear from experiencers. So it gets very murky. I'm very cautious to overanalyze these stories and just let them sit as a powerful story.
But shouldn't you overanalyze? I mean, I don't want to simplify things here, but it seems like if that is where the data is leading you, right? The owl is leading you in this direction.
Oh, I'm certainly looking for patterns. But I don't know whether I don't know what, like, did she go to a different dimension? Was it all, like, what if someone videotaped her? Would they have seen the owl? Would the owl have been invisible? Would they have seen a gray alien? Like, I can speculate. So this is a better way to say it. I can speculate on what may or may not have happened, but I got to be careful not to buy into any one avenue of thought, because that'll push away other avenues of thought. And I want to be really open to that. And I also feel like the story itself has a like, you can be influenced. Here, I'll tell you a story. This doesn't have anything to do with UFOs, but it has everything to do with the power of the owl. A guy contacts me, And he's a Native American. He's living in Michigan. I think he's part of the Huron tribe, and there's a Huron reservation in Michigan. I grew up in Michigan. I never knew it was there. So I looked up on a map, and sure enough, there's this little reservation. It's like this little postage stamp on the map of Michigan. And so he's on the growing up. He's 12 years old. He's got a kite, and he flies his kite, and it's up in this, and he loves this kite. And a big gust of wind comes, and it takes the ball of string of hand, and the kite flies through the air and goes into the forest, and he can see it went in there. So he gets his buddy, and they run into the forest, and they want to find the kite. So they walk around the forest, and they see the kite at the top of the tree. They find it, and they walk to the base of the tree, and at the base of the tree is an owl all wrapped up in the string. And they get an adult. They come back with scissors. They cut the owl free. The owl's injured. They nurse it back to health and release it. And this will tell you the type of research I'm doing. This will tell you the kind of conversations I've had. So he tells me this story, and I say, "Are you a shaman?" And he goes, "Oh man, in a word, yes." And I don't want to give away too much about what his shaman experience was, but it was tough. It was tough. It was really hard on him. And that would be the symbol. The owl is not a fluffy, light totem. It is a tough totem. It doesn't mean it's bad. Like a challenge isn't necessarily bad, but it can be hard work. So there's no UFO in that story, but it has everything about the myth of the owl. If I had that as a dream and sat on the analyst's couch, and this Jungian analyst said, "Oh, tell me your dream," and I told him that story, whoa, he would have full permission to say the symbolic of the owl, the string, you were tied to the string, you loved your kite, all these issues, you become a shaman, all of these issues wrapped up in this mythic story. This was a real event. This is what I'm finding, is that these real events play out with the mythic power of a dream. And that is the stuff. If you overanalyze a dream, you're almost doing a disservice to it, right? You should just let the dream percolate into your subconscious the way it needs to percolate, and just let that happen. That's hard to do sometimes, but that's the way I'm trying to approach the research. This is what came from the voice that came out of my mouth that said the owl is not important. The owl is a symbol on a door. That allowed me to really drink in these other types of stories without clinging to them, without being needy to want to find some pragmatic answer. The answer might be a mystical or etheric answer. I'm getting all kind of wishy-washy here, but this has been very helpful for me, and I feel it's made me a better, more open-minded researcher in these issues.
Now, can we go back to Yvonne Smith?
Sure.
Okay. So, in that regression, okay, do you feel consciously right now, do you feel that you have had direct ET contact that you remember?
That I remember, I've had. Question one: do I feel I've had direct ET contact? Yes, I will.
Okay, stop. Did you know that before Yvonne's session?
Yes,
you did.
Yeah.
Okay. I know that you said don't forget to ask me about the owls, but did Yvonne know this?
Yes, Yvonne read my book. So the first book, The Messengers, I talk about my what I call my confirmation experience. When there was an event that took place March 10th, 2013. I'm happy to talk about it. This was an event that I was. Do you know the term cry uncle? You give up. I cry uncle. I'm just giving up. So I gave up. I said, I'm not fighting this anymore. This is real. That happened on the night of March 10th, 2013.
Okay. Did you go into that with Yvonne? There's a reason why I'm asking.
Oh, in great detail, we went into that with Yvonne.
Okay. So what was the version with Yvonne versus what you recalled?
So here's what I recall. I was coming home. This is once again in southern Utah. I was driving home from the conference that's outside of Fountain Hills. What is it? Outside of Phoenix there, the IUFOC. And it was 2013. I was already doing the owl research. I had a podcast. I had a podcast since 2009. So I had a podcast for 4 years. Like I was immersed in this stuff. And I was driving home and I sleep on the side of the road. It's a beautiful night. I just pulled off to the side of the road this is on Highway 20 between Beaver, Utah and Cedar City, Utah. And it was a beautiful night. March, it's cold, wintertime kind of, March 10th. And there's no snow, but it's cold, cold, cold at night, and a trillion billion stars. And I lay my sleeping bag out and I go to sleep. I wake up, and on this hilltop nearby is this round thing. And I look at this thing, and I'm like calm. I'm like, my head's on a pillow. I got a big, thick winter down sleeping bag. I got a big, thick pad. I got my pillow, and I look at this thing and I say, that looks just like a landed flying saucer. And I'm like, hey, I'm kind of like, I know about this UFO stuff. I've been studying it. I know there's like all these issues, and I've talked to people with all these psychic abilities. And like, if this is a UFO, I should feel it, right? I should feel that this is a UFO. And I felt nothing. I felt nothing at all. And I rolled over and went to sleep. I woke up a second time, and there was a coyote howling near my head, as loud as it can ever be. I've slept outside 1,000 nights. I've heard a lot of coyotes. I have never, ever, ever heard one that close. I sat up. I couldn't see it. It felt like I should just take a dog biscuit and kind of wave it, and the coyote should be able to grab it. There was nothing there. This matches so closely to the owl in the tree in the event with Natasha. Now,
Right.
I woke up a third time. Oh, and the thing was still on the hill. I looked up at the thing. The thing's still on the hill. So I woke up a third time, and there's a bright light behind the bush at my feet. It's a juniper bush, and there's a bright light. And I was like, I don't think there's a road over there. I don't think there's like is there a car? Is there a car with a headlight? It's a bright light behind the bush. Now, the next morning I walked behind the bush. There was no place where I saw the light coming from. There was no place for a car. There's no reason anyone would be standing there with a flashlight or something. So, and I'll also add, there's no fear associated with this night. So after that happened, I went home, and the first thing I did, I was living in Idaho at the time. 10 hours later, I woke up early, and I get home, and the first thing I did is looked up on a map to see if there was any round structure. You know, this is Google Maps and everything like that, and zoom in, and there's nothing. I'm very, very skilled with maps, so I knew exactly where I was sleeping. I knew exactly where the hilltop was. There's nothing there. I've since been back to that spot many times. There is nothing on that hill. And that kind of freaked me out. So I did a drawing of it. I put it on my blog. I put the GPS coordinates. I'm very like fastidious about this kind of like documentation. And then later that day, I'm standing by my desk. Here, I'm going to do something here. I'm standing by my desk. I'm going to give you a visual aid here in a second. I'm standing by my desk, and I get this image in my mind of a line on a map. And it's got 3 pushpins on it. There, okay. So there's a line in a map with 3 pushpins. I get this psychic flash, and it's clearly southern Utah. I don't know if that makes sense. So there's a straight line with 3 points on a map. I know how strange this sounds. It just goes click, click in my mind. And I go, oh, here, I'll just make this map. And I looked at the one spot, and I was like, that was where I was last night. That's the night of March 10th, 2000. That's where I was. And the other end of the map is where I was in the tent with Natasha in Colorado. And the middle spot on the map was where I was with Natasha again, in where she saw the orb and I heard the owl in the tree. When I saw those 3 events, and this is like, I could like zoom in, like I had researched each one of these points. I had GPS coordinates for all of them. I could zoom in on these points, and at that point, there was no way that this is just like kind of some coincidence or some just, who knows? Like when those things lined up on a map, it was like my old life ended, my new life began. This stuff is real. I was going to use a different word than this stuff, but it was like, I was like, this is real. Right. And I was like, from that point on, I was like, okay, I'm no longer in doubt. Like I know something happened, but it has been happening in my life. I can't say quite what it's, I'm cautious to know for certainty, but wow, did that end. So back now, that's in the book, The Messengers. I talk about that in depth. I called up Yvonne. Oh, here, let me just say one more thing. This is the problem with these stories is there's so many little threads. So the westernmost point is March 10th, 2013. The other 2 points in 2011 and 2010, I'm with Natasha. Both of those times, I'm alone at that event on the side of the road. March 10th is Natasha's birthday.
Oh,
like
that's kind of whack.
That's like every little piece, every little thread I pull on seems to come up with something that's kind of like whack. That like that confirms that something more mystical is going on than just like ET in a metal spaceship.
Before we get back to Yvonne, I got to finish my list here. Okay, never camp with Mike. Never ride in a car with Mike. And stay out of Utah. Yeah, I got to
stay out of southern Utah. Yeah,
stay out of Utah. Okay, so now that's your memory.
That's my memory.
Now let's go to Yvonne, because that's where some of the unpacking, that's the eye-opening stuff. So what happens?
So I'm on the couch, and at the beginning of the session, I say, I want to look at the night of March 10th, 2013. I have no fear associated with that night. It was a nice night. It was a pretty night. It was pleasant. There's the owl, the coyote and everything like that. There was no fear. But I know full well something happened. So she said, great. So she takes me through the induction. It's going down these stairs. And then she says, okay, where are you? And I said, I'm sleeping on the side of the road. I got my sleeping bag. I got a big pillow. It's pretty. And then all of a sudden, remember I said that I woke up 3 times and there was a light behind the bush. And then all of a sudden I go, there's a light. And this is really spooky when you hear it on the I listened to it with headphones and transcribed it, and I go, it's them. It's them. I know it's them. It's really like, and then next thing I know, I say, I'm looking down. I'm floating in the air. I'm floating there. I'm looking down at this round thing, and it's obviously the big round building that's up on the hillside. I'm floating above it. I'm looking down at it, and then I say to Yvonne, but I think I'm still in the sleeping bag. And she says, Mike, are you out of body? And I say, I don't know, but I'm looking down at this thing and I think I'm still in the sleeping bag. Now here, let me say this before I go any further. I don't trust this story. It might be true. Like I have no way of knowing whether it's true or not. I don't trust the story. What I can say is it's a powerful story. And I'll take it as a mythic parable and pay attention to it, but I can't vouch for what may or may not have happened. So I'm looking down at this structure, this round thing. It's black. It's got a ring of lights around it. And then all of a sudden, whoosh, I'm walking in this hallway. I'm like walking in this hallway. And it's like a curved hallway, and it's all shiny like metal or like aluminum, like brushed aluminum, and it's curving and it's kind of rounded. And if there was a hallway that ran the full circumference of a freaking flying saucer, this is what it would look like. So I'm walking in this rounded hallway, and the very first thing I sense is I'm not tall. Like I'm 6 foot tall, and I know just what it means to be 6 foot tall, and I'm like, I'm not tall. Like I am not tall. And I say that to Yvonne, and she says, look around, what do you see? And I look to my right and I look to my left, and there are these gray beings each side of me with the big bald head and the black eyes. And I'm the same height. And Yvonne says, look down at yourself. I look down at myself and I got these long, skinny fingers and I got this skinny, skinny, skinny body with this tight-fitting spacesuit on, and I say, I think I'm a gray alien. Now, let me say this. I do not believe this literally, but these are the words that came out of my mouth. So and then she says, what happens next? And then I said, all of a sudden I'm in a conference room and I'm standing like I'm on trial, or like I'm at a tribunal, and this conference room is like ugly. It's got like beige carpeting and it's got plastic folding tables and ugly wallpaper and fluorescent lights. And I'm standing in front of this table, and on the other side of the table are these beings, and they're kind of fuzzed out, like I can't really see them, but wow, I sure got the impression that they're like gray aliens. And I say to them, why am I here? And they say, you volunteered for this. And I'm like, what does that mean, I volunteered for this? Why am I here? And they say, now is the time. And we got kind of stuck. I would ask the same question, they would give the same answer. And then there came a point when it was like, something just cracked, and I was furious. And I was like, wow, this is rough to listen to. I was like screaming at these things. I was swearing at these things. I was like, and I did this totally crazed, it was like, I screamed like, you never told me it would be this hard being here. You never told me there would be pain. You never told me there would be loneliness. You never told me there would be anger. You never told me it would be this hard being here. And like unpacking this afterwards, it was very clear, like I was like, the implication is, again, I don't buy this, I don't believe it, but this is how it played out, the story, that I had existed in some other dimension, some other realm, as a gray alien, as one of them. And I had chose to incarnate here on Earth in this identity. And I was furious. I was like, you never told me there would be pain and loneliness. And I'm crying and sobbing. This is really rough to listen to. And Yvonne is incredibly sensitive and very sweet. You can hear just like,
yeah, let me jump.
Jump in.
No. I don't. I want you to finish. But was all of this information coming from you in one spurt, in one go, or was Yvonne interacting and asking questions, or this anger part? Did this just all come out in one chunk?
It came out in one chunk, and she was like, Mike, why are you so emotional? You know what I did do? This is something, I was freaking out, and I said, I need to go deeper. You can hear me say this right on the thing. I need to go deeper. And so Yvonne did the little thing. We're like, okay, we're going to go down some more steps. We're going down some more steps. We're going down some more steps. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, and then I'm like, it was so over the top. I mean, it's like, I'm screaming, I'm swearing like a drunken sailor. Like I am like, and she says, Mike, what do they want? And I scream, they want me to play some role. And then I'm like back on the couch. I'm like, I went from as tense as I've ever been in my life. It felt like my heart stopped. I was just like, there's total silence on the tape. You can hear me at that moment go, it sounds like I deflated. It sounds like someone put a pin in me and I popped me. And I'm quiet for like 45 seconds. And Yvonne asks, Mike, what happens next? And I said, I think I'm back in the sleeping bag. So she asks a handful more questions. And then she asks the question, Mike, what is your connection to owls? And I say, I speak in this kind of poetic voice. I say, the owls aren't important. And I give that whole thing about the door, and the owl is symbol on a door. So, okay, so that happened. The event, we were exploring this in August of 2018. The event,
and consciously, you had no memory of any of this.
Nothing.
Right.
This
only
blindsided me.
You only saw the object on the hill.
I never even called it a flying saucer. I called it a flying saucer. I made a joke. I said, that looks like a flying saucer. I've tried just to say, I don't know what it was, but I will say it was a round structure on a hill. I thought it could have been a water tower or some sort of, but it was like, but there's nothing on that hill. And it would have been big.
You also said, and I may have remembered this wrong, that it was a light on the top of the hill that you saw?
There was a ring of lights around this. So imagine a big black cylinder cut like a
okay.
and
So
a ring of lights dot around the outside of it. Yeah, so it was lit up.
That was my question. Okay, so when you were above it, you see that it's black. When you were in your sleeping bag looking at it, was it black with a ring of lights?
It was a black with a ring of like little dot lights. So imagine a black water tower that's sort of stubby, or like water tank that's sort of stubby, that would be big, and it would have a ring of lights, just little lights around the outside of it. So it wasn't like big glowing lights, just like a little light, like a single light bulb.
Now, were you ever talking? Did your higher self come in play, like anything in the third person with Yvonne, or was it all just Mike directly? You?
It was all just me, so it was all first person. And if there was a higher self event, it would have been the poetic thing about the owls or a symbol on a door.
Right. That's what it felt like. You were saying there.
And I did speak in the first person because I said, I am an artist and I know how people take in a symbol.
Right. When I was doing my session again, I'm not going to give anything away here. I'm not going to say anything specific, but never in my life I ever thought about, contemplated, or done, or spoke in the third person about myself. Never. I've never even thought of, considered that. Man, my higher self was just a rambling guy in this session. It was so strange to hear that and to feel it. It was a bizarre. I want to use a bad word. It was a blank. It was a mind blank.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was just, what is going on here? Yeah. It's absolutely fascinating. And here's the other part with this. As I don't want to run out of time. How much better could the world be if people paid attention to synchronicities? Because the percentage of the population of planet Earth that pay attention to synchronicities has got to be like 1/1,000,000%. Right?
I would bump it up a little more than that, maybe 1%.
Okay, you think it's 1%? Okay.
Well, judging by my email inbox, I'm going to say it's more than 1/1,000,000%. Yeah. So.
Okay. Well, in our community, it's everybody. I get that, but
in other communities too.
Yeah. Okay. But you understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Oh, I do. Yeah.
How much better of a place would it be if people would just pay attention to synchronicities?
So, in the lore, in the pop culture issues, well, I guess I just told a story where I was on board a craft in a way, whether it was me or whether it was some fictitious visionary story that was presented to me. But, there's this thing about UFO contact. It means something. Oh, you get taken out of your bed at night. You get taken out of your car on a lonely road. You get taken on board a craft. Like, I've heard those stories, but it's such a small part of what I'm hearing. The people who reach out and contact me, this is what they tell me. They tell me powerful, mind-blowing synchronicities. And then they'll say, then I saw a UFO and I saw an owl. And then in conjunction with that is powerful, mind-blowing, impossibly strange synchronicities. That is the thread I'm pulling on. The owl is symbolic of these strange synchronicities. For me, the UFO is, there's an owl events that people tell me. They tell me UFO events and they tell me synchronistic events. I try to weight them all the same. I don't say that the owl is more important than the UFO or the synchronicity is more important than any other aspect. But those three elements, owls, synchronicities, and UFOs, I try to weight them all the same. Wow, have I heard some stories of synchronistic craziness, as well as in my own life.
Yeah, how crazy I mean, we're already in a crazy place right now with ET and contact and what's going on. But how crazy would it be, right? Where you've got the Senate Intelligence Committee, you've got a week's worth, 5 days of hearings and testimony and witnesses and all this stuff going on. And somebody steps up. Well, okay, so this is what happened. So I'm driving in my car and I see this owl. Right? and you've got some senator up there. Okay, you said a what? An owl? Yeah. So I see this owl, and then the flying saucer came down, and then these beings came out, and the owl is there. How crazy would that be? That we could quite possibly be into an owl conversation and have a senator go, well, yeah, my wife, same thing happened to her. Yeah, It was an owl. But I think that's where we are today.
I've talked to some insiders, and I've heard a little bit from some insiders. Nothing direct, but like, here's my impression: like they know that there's this other aspect to this. So people who have owl and UFO experiences co-joined, right? So I get a little, the person who's the shaman who had the kite and the owl. He's not in this thing. But the people who have owls and UFOs co-joined, like I've been asking, because they come to me, and they tell me their story, and I just ask now, like, what do you do for work? And they say, oh, I'm a Reiki therapist. I would say that half the people, like I've got thousands of reports, I would say half the people with co-joined owl and UFO experiences are working as energy healers. They're working as Reiki therapists. That's like I want to hire some statistician to, like, this is only anecdotal because I can't crunch the numbers in any meaningful way. I don't have a big spreadsheet, but I just got the anecdotal data in my head. I'll tell you, it might be higher than 50%. But people who have had owl and UFO experiences co-joined are energy healers, and I would say the vast majority of them have powerful psychic abilities too.
What's the connection?
I wish I knew. Like the owl is symbolic of this other realm. In the simplest terms, the owl is symbolic of this other realm, right? Whether that's the land of our ancestors, whether that's the land of the gods, whether that's the land of the UFO occupants. And then they, in the aftermath of their experiences, they become energy healers. I don't know the answer, but that's the pattern. And you can just sit with that and I mean, it's got a mood to it that's pretty, I almost want to say heartening.
Well, yeah, there's something to it because you know how people, and I'm one of them, will reference the effect of the cover of communion on them. And I literally, and this is way before, I'm talking about, this is 1989 when I got that book. I had to put it face down in my bedroom as I read it. I could not walk in the room. If that thing was face up, so anyway, I'm no different than anybody else. And people talk about that today. It's the same thing with the messengers. And the people react to that, and they react to an owl, and then it stirs something, and it stirs a memory, and it pulls something back out of them, much like the cover of communion. Do you feel that is what's going on, that some of these things are just put in a box, right, stuck on a shelf, and forgotten about until it's triggered?
To some degree, I've certainly got cases like that in my files. So yeah, or it. So it's very common for someone to be like in the forest. They see an owl. The owl flies off. A flying saucer zips right over them. Often more a triangular craft will zip right over them. That is very common. I got that a lot in my files. And so they're like right there, co-joined. I have a video clip of an owl flying across. This is from someone who was taking kind of like CE5 type footage in his backyard. John Martin is his name, and he's like following a little dot in the sky, and an owl clearly enters the frame, passes right in front of the craft in the sky. The craft is not much to see. It's a little dot. At other points in the film footage, it's zigging and zagging. At that point, it's just kind of floating there. But like, wow, what do you make of that?
What are you going to do with all this data? I mean, you can continue to write books for sure.
People ask me that, like, they basically say, do you have enough to write another book? And I'm like, I could write 50 books. Mm-hmm. It would be the same story over and over and over again. Like, here, I'll just do it right here. I got here this 1, 2, 3. 3 books. You stack these books up. That's 1,000 pages. Comes out almost to exactly 1,000 pages of owls and UFO accounts. If I can't make my case in 1,000 pages, like I'm not. There's nothing more I can say.
Hold up the cover to Messengers real quick. Just hold it up. It's a
little shiny, but let's see if we can do it.
Just hold it up. There you go. Now you just freaked out 1,000 people in real time. It's like, because that's it. It's like the cover of Communion, and I'm being very serious about that. So many, the book has resonated deeply with so many, and congratulations on that, for not only putting the connection together, but putting your own experiences in the book so people can understand what actually may be going on.
So if I'm doing, so here, let me just, I've sat here, I've given up. I don't try to hide much, right? So I blurt this stuff out to my own. It's like, it's probably not the right thing to do. Just like tell the stories. I must sound crazy. I recognize that. And at the same time that the owl and UFO accounts have this rich mythic quality that don't seem to show up in other types of accounts. So like, I'm not looking at the big totality of the UFO phenomena. I'm not looking into government conspiracies. I'm not looking at the Tic Tac video. I'm not talking to jet pilots. I'm pulling the thinnest little thread of the owl and the UFO. And it has been so rich and so rewarding, the types of stories. That story of the boy with the kite. I got hundreds of stories that have that same mythic power.
And I haven't seen mine yet. And I will.
Be careful what you look. I don't want to jinx anything, so I'm going to stay silent here. But I've got a lot of stories of podcasters. Here's a story of one podcaster I was going to go on his show the next day. So he's the night before. His name's Juan. He does a podcast called Juan on Juan, and he's with his son is like 6, and he's in the backyard. And he says, I'm going to be talking to the owl guy. He tells his wife, I'm going to be talking to the owl guy. They're in the backyard. This is in Florida, and I wonder if maybe we'll see an owl tonight. And his son goes, Dad, look! And a floating orange orb passes through his backyard. So he was thinking, I'm going to see an owl, and he sees an orange orb instead. That kind of playful switcheroo is embedded into these stories.
Man, I can't wait for our next conversation. And great show tonight, Mike. And it's been too long, my friend. But much luck throughout 2024. Thank you for helping me kick off this new year this week, man. Great night tonight on the show. Thank you so much.
My honor. Thank you so much. It's been great.
And where can everybody reach out to you?
You can find me at mikeclelland.com, all one word. And from there's like a hub. It'll take you to my old podcasts, which are all archived. It'll take you to the books. It'll take you to my blog, where I have a lot of research archived. Oh, let me ask one more thing. I wrote a novel, and that's right in the book list there too. So. Oh,
The Unseen.
Yeah.
Yeah, The Unseen. We, you know what? We'll come back another show and we'll discuss that.
Great. That'll be tons of fun. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mike. Behave and be well. Like I said, enjoy your 2024, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mike Clelland. It is MikeClelland.com. The links are below over on social media and on our website. And that's going to wrap our first week of 2024 here on Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I want everybody to enjoy your weekend. Be safe. Have a great time. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Thank you, John Aside. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and this broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, copied, or downloaded anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Until Monday, I want you to be safe. Go Backley Tappy.